Good evening, everyone. We're glad to host tonight here at Pitt County, along with the municipalities in the county, a review of our newly released flood insurance rate maps for Pitt County. Tonight we have a number of people here that are interested in the release, as well as representatives from municipalities and even the adjacent county, Beaufort County. What we're doing tonight is actually previewing these maps, and these maps are also available online at ncfloodmaps.com, and people can go online and see what changes have been made to these maps. Tonight we have representatives from the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management, the Floodplain Mapping Section, and with us tonight to do the majority of the presentation is Steve Garrett, who's a Community Development Planner. And we also have our newly hired Eastern NFIP planner, Maureen O'Shea, and of course she'll be handling some of the questions and some of the remarks pertinent here to Eastern North Carolina. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Steve for the actual presentation tonight.
Good evening. Again, my name is Steve Garrett. I'm with the North Carolina Floodplain Mapping Program. This is a public information session to deal with the preliminary flood insurance rate map release for the majority of Pitt County. It also impacts Washington and Wilson counties with some of the bordering streams. Just to give you a brief overview of our mapping process, first we start with scoping, which is a needs assessment which we involve the communities in. We acquire base map information, that would be all of our roadways, aerial imagery, and other information that would help provide some orientation to the map. Our section, which is part of the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management, collects this information from the counties once a year. We move into map production after we receive our funding from FEMA. We hire our contractors. We do have a representative from our engineering firm here tonight if there's any technical questions. And once the maps are released, we move into our post-preliminary processing section, which we'll talk about tonight, and it deals with the community comment, appeals, and comment process. Just to give you an overview of the scoping, and we met back in May of 2006 with local officials here in Greenville, and again looked at a county-wide perspective of specific streams that needed new or revised studies, and helped prioritize those needs during that meeting. Now that we're in the post-preliminary processing, the preliminary panels are issued. During that issuance process, there would be 2 notices in the local paper. The second notice would start the 90-day appeal period, which started on the 21st of September. We are now in the 90-day appeal protest or comment period, and during this time we do host some educational meetings such as the one tonight. And this is just our general process. Once the appeal and protest period ends, we do try to go through the resolution of any of those comments or appeals. In some cases, we will issue revised preliminary maps for further review. Once all the appeals and protests or comments have been resolved, we will move into the 6-month compliance period once FEMA issues a letter of final determination. At that point in time, we will assume that all the studies have been finalized, all the final maps will be prepared, and the community will have 6 months to adopt revisions to their flood damage prevention ordinance. So some important dates. Again, the preliminary maps were issued to Pitt County and the surrounding jurisdictions that were impacted, mainly in Washington and Wilson counties, on June 8th, 2011. Our 90-day appeal comment period started on the 21st of September and ends on December 19th. We had a preliminary meeting with the local officials on August 23rd of this year, and of course tonight we are having our public participation meeting, October 19th. Now, to differentiate between the appeals and the comments, an appeal is a formal objection to the new or revised base flood elevations, or BFEs, in the preliminary flood insurance study report or on the firm panels themselves, and they should be submitted within this 90-day appeal or comment period. Appeals must be based on scientific or technical data to show that those proposed BFEs are in some way incorrect. We do have an appeals and protest fact sheet. It's available here on the table for those of you that are with us locally. For those of you watching on television, you can visit our website, ncfloodmaps.com, and find a copy of that fact sheet as well. A comment is a formal objection or a comment on the information in the flood insurance study report or shown on our map panels that may not necessarily be related to the base flood elevations. These comments generally involve discrepancies for the delineations of the special flood hazard area or floodplain boundaries, the floodway boundaries, corporate limits or ETJ limits, and the road names or their configurations or locations, making sure we get all our labels correct. Any property owner can submit an appeal or protest or comment. They should submit those with their petition and supporting documentation to the local official, whether it's their chief elected or executive officer or the local floodplain administrator. The community should compile their comments and appeals from their citizens and forward those to the North Carolina Floodplain Mapping Program and FEMA. If for some reason the community officials are aware through communication with you that an appeal or protest may come in after that 90-day appeal period, we may be able to accept it even though it's past the 90-day appeal period. The 90-day appeal period is statutory. It's set by federal regulatory requirements, and it cannot be extended. Appeals and protests should be submitted to our director, John Dorman, and the address is included on the screen as well as in our fact sheet. Mr. Lohr with the Mitigation Division with FEMA Region 4 is also the other contact for FEMA. And again, the appeal period ends on December 19th. Changes to these new flood maps, any of the boundaries, base flood elevations, will not affect flood insurance policies until the effective date. Again, that date has not been set and will be set by FEMA and through this process and issued with the letter of final determination. And again, that letter will be issued to the communities 6 months prior to that effective date. Looking at some of the revision results, the blue areas or streams, center lines, were the areas that were studied during this particular revision or update. Overall, we provided 96 miles of new detailed study. We did not do any additional limited detailed studies or redelineations of previously studied or detailed studies. So we tried to eliminate all the old FEMA studies from past flood insurance studies and get everything as best up to date, at least as of the last update that occurred in 2004. As you can see, some dates at the bottom, there were some subsequent revisions that were made in 2007 and 2008 on a much smaller scale. Looking at overall floodplain areas in the county, 21% of the county that's located in the Tar-Pamlico Basin is in the special flood hazard area, whereas 18% of the county that's located in the Neuse River Basin is located in the special flood hazard area. Looking at some specific areas, we do have some old Zone A's that are effective. These are areas that do not have any base flood elevation data, so the flood hazard areas are not well defined. With the new analysis, we have extended this study and created a new detailed study. So we do have now the floodway, the Zone AE or special flood hazard area boundaries, a 500-year or 0.2% annual chance floodplain boundary, as well as the floodway and base flood elevations provided. And as you can see in the white there, in the lower left-hand corner, is the old effective information. So just a comparison there. This is another area with an effective Zone AE. And looking at the new study, we have again extended the study farther upstream to provide more detailed flood information in that particular area. And one final example. And there's the new and showing the old effective area in the white. So some modest changes in this particular area. To help folks with some of the color coding that we have on our maps, Zone AE is shown with a blue dot stippling shading. The floodway is shown as a white hashed area. Zone X shaded is shown as a dot, a black stippling shaded area. The area that's also unshaded is also referred to as Zone X. Our cross sections are numbered hexagons, and you'll see the cross section that will cut across the stream center line. Base flood elevations are rounded to the nearest whole foot on our maps and are shown with a wavy line. And the stream name will be printed either alongside the stream or next to the stream with an arrow pointing to the center line. And we also have benchmarks that can be used by surveyors and other professionals. They're also depicted on the map as well. This is a comparison map. The blue shaded areas show effective information. Any of the areas where you have an adjacent red shaded area or red area overlaid will be areas where we've had new studies completed. If any blue areas are shown, poking through the red shaded areas, be areas that will be revised and removed from the special flood hazard area. Some of the main streams that were studied were Grindle Creek, portions of the Neuse River, Chicod Creek, and Contentnia Creek, as well as Moyes Run, Canaan Swamp, and a few others here in the county. How do these new maps impact flood insurance rates? Structures built prior to the new maps becoming effective, which again will probably be sometime next year, will be eligible to be insured at the same rate as they were under the previous maps, with the exception of any preferred risk policies in a Zone X that are now in a Zone AE. We don't anticipate having too many of those in the county, but in the event that they do, a standard X zone policy would be available if it provides a better rate than the standard AE policy. This would require that continuous coverage be made on the house, meaning that an existing policy would have to be renewed, or documentation of the construction date, the flood zones, and base flood elevations at the date that the structure was permitted. Again, structures permitted under current flood insurance rate maps will have grandfathering rights as well. We do have a brochure on our website, Saving Money in the Wake of Changing Flood Maps, that's available. We also have, again, here in our in the local room, some additional handouts from FEMA that are also available on FEMA's website about the grandfathering rules and how changes to existing maps can impact existing structures. For any folks that may have a letter of map amendment or letter of map revision based on we're going to talk about development impacts as well as impacts on letters of map change, which would include letters of map amendment or letters of map revision based on fill. Just to remind folks that development under the National Flood Insurance Program includes any man-made change or improvements to unimproved or improved real estate, including but not limited to the obvious buildings and other structures, but it also includes mining, dredging, filling, grading, paving, excavation or drilling operations, storage of material or equipment. So the definition of development under the National Flood Insurance Program is much more broad than other definitions may be. Again, some of the minimum requirements would be that we elevate all our structures and utility systems, or at least protect them, to that established base flood elevation that's published by FEMA once those maps go effective. Most of the jurisdictions here in Pitt County do include a freeboard, which is an additional level of protection above the base flood elevations. We also like to prohibit or discourage development or encroachments in the floodways and non-encroachment areas. There are some additional regulatory requirements for development in those areas, but they still may be development if those requirements are met. Impact on development requirements. When FEMA publishes a new flood map or new regulations are adopted, any compliant development can be grandfathered based on the maps and regulations that are in the time of the effect that the building permit was issued. So if you have a building permit that was issued prior to that 6-month compliance period, provided that it hasn't expired, then the conditions that that permit was issued on will continue. Until a point in which that structure either substantially damaged or substantially improved, which is equated to 50% or more of the value of the structure itself. That does not include the land value, and it would be the current market value or some other determination made by the county or community. For information on how these new preliminary maps may affect areas, especially areas where we used to have old Zone A's, there are some opportunities for the community to use this preliminary data starting today or starting in the June 8th date to enforce their ordinance based on better available data. Again, as we add more studies to the or more detailed studies to our flood insurance rate maps and provide more data, this use of preliminary data becomes a little bit less relevant in some areas. But there are some areas here in the county that this document would apply to, and it's available on our website under the fact sheet link. For folks that are interested in knowing a little bit more about basic floodplain management requirements, we do have a quick guide. It does have a lot of nice illustrations and some simple definitions. It's available on our website as a handy guide. Impact on letters of map change, and again, that's a letter of map amendment, LOMA, or letter of map revision based on fill, LOMR-F. In most cases, we can either incorporate that, and in most cases, these are letters of map revision that are based on large-scale changes. There are 4 within the county, and that's countywide, including all the communities that have been incorporated into the new maps, meaning that we are now showing those boundaries on the printed panels rather than having an attachment map to show that change. Most of them will also be not incorporated and will be reissued or revalidated. There's at least 62 of those within the community. So once the new maps go effective, they will be reissued and they will still be valid. In most cases, this is removing structures from the special flood hazard area for areas that are too small to show as out on our map based on the scale in which they're produced. Unfortunately, we have 2 that are going to be superseded. One is in the county and one is in the city of Greenville. And this is where we've had a new study or analysis that determined that the base flood elevations are now higher than the adjacent ground elevations at those 2 particular properties. And they will be now shown and considered to be in the special flood hazard area. There's also, if we go back to that slide, as you see the link there, ncfloodmaps.com, there is a link for summary of map actions, which will list all these properties. I do have a copy here with me tonight for those of you that are in the room that may want to look at that document. Visiting our website, this is our map viewer, so if you want the map information rather than a general information about the program or the fact sheets, which can be found at ncfloodmaps.com. You can also visit floodmaps.nc.gov/FMIS for flood mapping information system. This is an area, the main page, where you can add, either click on the county of your choice or enter in a street address. Once you get into the viewer itself, and again, this is an area up in Grindle Creek in the northern part of the county, you can click on both the preliminary information you'll check on by clicking on the yellowish-orange folder icon at the top on the toolbar. Has an hourglass or a magnifying glass shape on it as well. The little list will pop up that you see on the right-hand side. The effective data, which is shown as flood hazards, will be checked automatically, and it'll show that general blue area that has a slight hashing on it for those that are watching on television or in the room here. And then you can see the more detailed information from the preliminary by checking on the map maintenance prelim tab or checkbox. And then you can toggle either one of those off or on. Again, once you first zoom into the area, the flood hazards box will be checked, showing only the effective information. And if you're interested in the preliminary information, again, check on the map maintenance prelim tab. If you have any questions, I can be reached at 919-715-5711, extension 118, or at sgarrett, Garrett, at ncem.org. Ms. O'Shea, our NFIP planner for Eastern North Carolina, has her contact information available. She is based out of Kinston, North Carolina. Hope Morgan is our GIS planner, and Tom Langen is the engineer in our office that is in charge of or has been assigned to Pitt County studies. Additional information can be also found with FEMA at FEMA.gov or through the National Flood Insurance Program, floodsmart.gov. Any questions related to the map can be directed to our office, or you can contact FEMA at 877-FEMA-MAP, and that is a toll-free number. If anyone has any questions, that concludes our presentation, and we'll stick around for as long as folks have. We appreciate everybody coming out, the efforts of the communities to get the word out and the public notification, the ability to broadcast this on the television, as well as the local media for putting out news articles and other information to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to the viewing public as well as the people in the audience tonight. Again, to reiterate, if you prefer to talk with someone locally, if you have property within the city of Greenville or its extraterritorial jurisdiction, the local contact number for their certified floodplain manager is 329-4478. And for areas outside the city and its ETJ, that would be all the small towns and including unincorporated Pitt County. The contact number is 902-3250. And as Steve has indicated, ncfloodmaps.com has all this information available as well. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and contact us if you need to. Good evening.